Ready?
And here's the loading bar. It's almost done.
And you've got it filming too, Joe. So.
Are you good?
Yes, we are now live and recording.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. The time is 7:01 p.m. I welcome you to the regular town council meeting for Town of Sunnyvale for Monday, April 27th. Please join me in standing wherever you are for the invocation. Tonight's invocation will be given by Council Member Allen.
Let's pray. Father Almighty God, we thank you for this night. We thank you for the opportunity to serve that will make us stronger individually, the community, as a state, and as a country. Father, we know you're in charge. We know that you control the destiny, and that this fight is one that you have known about and that you're in control. Father, I pray for our country and the leaders. I pray for our county, our state, our community, for the wisdom and for the direction, Father. Father, I pray for our town manager, for Susan, and for Saji, our mayor, as they continue to make decisions that impact our town in an unusual, unprecedented time. Father, just give them wisdom and courage. I pray for those that are sick and those that need healing. Father, that you will put your hands on them and heal and provide mercy and grace. Father, we pray that you will you'll resolve and rid of this virus. And Father, that you'll give us the strength and courage to live amongst it until it's eradicated. Father, we pray for wisdom tonight, and the decisions that we have to make, and the discussions that we will have, Father, that you'll guide us and that you'll lead us. Father, we thank you for your sovereignty. We thank you for your mercy and your grace. And Father, we thank you for all that you bless us with. Father, we pray these things in your name. Amen.
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 Thank you, Mr. Allen. Please continue to be standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America.
and to the republic
Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now time is 7:03. Let me officially call to order the regular town council meeting for Monday, April 27th. For the record, all council members, Mr. Wade, are you available? I don't think so. All council members except Mr. Wade are present. With the 6 of 7 council members present, we have quorum. Council, the first item on the agenda is announcements. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.0415, council or staff may make announcements. So if you have, council, I'm going to turn this over to you. If anyone have an announcement to make, please do so at this time. I guess nothing for the council. Staff, Susan, or anyone else in the staff has been announced. I guess there are none, so I'm going to move on to the public forum. At this time, I'm going to invite anybody from the members of the audience to come forward and speak to the council on any other items other than personnel matters or matters or legal issues. If anyone from the audience would like to come forward and speak to the council, please do so at this time. Joseph, anyone raising their hand?
No one is raising their hand. As a reminder, press *9 at any time to raise your hand or use the Zoom app to be unmuted. There's no one raising their hand at this time.
And Mr. Wade is trying to get into the meeting, sir.
So no one is raising their hands, so I'm going to close the public forum. We'll come back to the next item of recognition in a second here.
Larry Allen just raised his hand.
Oh, Mr. Allen, did you have something to say, sir?
Mayor, I have a question. How many people do we have online from the community? We can't see that. I was just curious if you could.
We
Give us-
have 12 panelists at the moment that are on and 4 attendees.
Can you define attendees and panelists, please?
One attendee is F. Conroy. Second is Gretchen. Third is Phyllis Moore. And the fourth is Terry Shatter.
Okay. And everybody else is the panelists are us,
Yes, the panelists is us. Would you like me to read those off?
please.
We have ourselves, Jonathan Freeman, Kevin Clark, Mark Egan, Andrew Hawks, Brenda McDonald, Brian Creed, Burton Barr, Larry Allen, Liz Hopkins, Rashad Jackson, and Brian Finch.
Also, Mayor, may I make a note? Larry, there's a button called participants. If you hover your mouse down at the bottom, a button called participants will show up. If you click on that, you can see who's the panelists or the attendees.
Yeah, I got it. I couldn't find it. My screen was a little bit bigger than that. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, moving on to, Mr. Wade is still not online. Okay, so moving on to consent agenda items. Council, there is one item on the consent agenda. That is to consider approval of minutes for the regular meeting of the town council for April 13th, 2020. Are there any discussions on the consent agenda item? If there is none, can I have a motion to approve consent agenda item 2 as presented?
Motion to approve consent item number 2.
Motion made by Mr. Clark to approve consent agenda item 2.
Second.
Second by Mr. Finch. Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed 6-0. Mr. Wade is absent. I'm going to call the, you want me to pull the budget early?
I think go ahead and do the right. We'll go ahead and do, what item is that, please?
That's the very last item, right? At number 7.
Yes, sir. If we could pull item 7 up and then put Frank as a presenter.
So I'm going to, council with your permission, I'm going to move up agenda item 7. Discuss, consider, and act upon accepting the independent auditor's report on financial statements. Good evening, Ms. Hopkins. Can I turn this over to you first?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Frank Conroy.
Can they hear you?
Can y'all hear me?
They're saying yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Frank Conroy with Fox Bird and Company is an attendee here tonight to present the audit report. Frank?
Good evening, Frank. Frank, can you hear us? If you can, we cannot hear you.
Got him unmuted.
I am unmuting him now. His hand's raised as well. He is now unmuted.
Frank, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. I apologize, this is a little bit unique to me. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, I'm Frank Conroy. I'm the shareholder and CPA with Fox Bird and Company. I'm joining you this evening to present the audit report for the year ended September 30, 2019. We had a discussion on Thursday with Mr. Freeman and Mr. Finch, Liz Hopkins, and the city manager to go over the audit report in greater detail and to give them an opportunity to ask questions about our findings and the feedback we had relative to the audit. During that meeting, we delivered a letter that we refer to as the governance letter, where we communicate what auditing standards require us to communicate to those charged with governance. For example, we communicate during that or in that letter what we believe to be the most significant estimate and the most significant disclosure in your financial statements. We discussed whether or not we had any difficulties in dealing with management during the audit, as well as the timing and the type of the report and such that we delivered. In addition, we deliver a letter that we refer to as management comments, where we give feedback on some things that we feel like are possible areas for improvement in your internal controls and or your operating approach relative to your accounting function. I'm happy to say that we did not have any difficulties in dealing with management. The audit went generally as planned. As I'm sure you can appreciate, this is our first year on the audit since about 10 years ago when we did the town's audit many years. And there's always some struggles in the first year getting things organized and accustomed, but generally speaking, we worked through that effectively and were able to deliver the report by mid-March. The first thing that I'd like to call to your attention relative to the comprehensive annual financial report is our opinion on the financial statements. It's 2 pages on pages 5 and 6 of the document. In that opinion, we issue an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements, which essentially communicates to the users of the financial statements that they can be relied upon to be free of material misstatement. By that, we're not making absolute assurances that there are no misstatements at all. Based on our audit procedures, we had to exercise judgment on how many transactions to look at and how much depth to go into. And there's always a possibility that there are some misstatements in the financial statements, but we are able to draw an opinion on whether or not they are materially correct and can be relied upon the users. And I'm happy to say that that was the conclusion that we came to, that the opinion is that it's a clean opinion and your financial statements can be relied upon. As I mentioned in the meeting on Thursday, we had a discussion with management and your finance committee, and we delivered to them that governance letter. In that governance letter, I communicated to them that I believe the most significant estimate and disclosure in your financial statements is relative to your pension. The pension liability is determined by TMRS, which is Texas Municipal Retirement System, and they are on a calendar year basis. The city is on a fiscal year basis ending September 30. And there are adjustments in your financial statements to present the cumulative liability. And it also discloses what the impact on a change in the assumed rate of return in the pension would be, assuming it went up by 1% or down by 1%. The disclosed liability or the recorded liability for the pension is $987,173 as of September 30, 2019. In the event that return were to improve by 1 percentage point, the liability would be reduced all the way down to $198,000 and change. In the event that the return were to deteriorate by 1%, liability would go up to 1.9 million and change. So you can see that 1% fluctuation in the assumed rate of return has a significant impact on the estimated liability that's in your books, which is why I believe that it's likely the most significant disclosure and significant estimate. There are other estimates in your financial statements. For example, depreciation of fixed assets is an estimate where you're expensing the things like roads and buildings and furniture and fixtures over an estimated useful life, which may or may not turn out to be an accurate representation of how long those things last. There are estimates in there for uncollectible receivables, compensated absences and such. But again, I feel like the pension liability is the most significant estimate. At this point, I'd like to open it up and see whether any of you have any questions for me or would like any additional information relative to the audit.
So I know we had 2 members from the council were part of the audit subcommittee, Mr. Freeman and Mr. Finch. Gentlemen, do you have any comments or anything extra you discussed you want to bring up to the attention of the council? Can hear Jonathan.
Unmute Jonathan.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Jonathan, can you?
I was on the committee and we went through a pretty extensive review of this and I thought they did a great job. I think the staff did a great job. And so I really didn't have any follow-up questions. He covered the points, covered, I think, the major thing we had a question about. And I think we have good answers to that. And so I'm comfortable with the report as presented.
Mr. Freeman? Sorry.
You're muted, John. You're muted.
I hit unmuted.
Can you try again, Mr. Freeman? We heard him earlier.
Hit your space bar.
He's showing muted on my end.
Yeah, I tried unmuting him. It wouldn't let me.
So he has
I
himself.
don't know if he can hear me, but Alt A is what the instruction I got was to unmute.
I think he left and came back in to try.
No, he's there. See him?
All right, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Technical difficulties over here.
It's all
I
right.
can't do this when it happens face to face. Now, I just wanted to echo what Ryan said. The meeting went well. It was very clean, very straightforward. They did a great job. Liz continues to do a good job. So everything was very easy and very painless.
So they mentioned a couple of things about depreciation of some of the assets, the roads and all, and also pension liability. Is that a concern at all from the staff?
It's not from my perspective. It is something that you have to watch, and I think the council is very aware of that pension liability. We looked at the percentage of our funded pension liability, and I believe it was between 78 and 80%, which is what, since I've been here, has been our comfort zone. We've also increased up to the 12%, the 2-to-1 match. TMRS doesn't require that, but it is something we have to watch. You read the news, you know what's happened in other communities. They don't pay attention to the pension. The depreciation of assets, again, you depreciate something for 10 years based on thinking its useful life. For the general fund, that is not a cash transaction. It's simply a writing down of the asset. It's a non-cash transaction. For the utility fund, it is an expense because that's an enterprise fund. But no, I don't have any concerns with that.
Okay. Have you heard similar comments from the previous auditors about how we depreciate, or this is a new comment from a new perspective?
No, and I think part of it is we've received so much in developer contributions with all of the building that we've had, new roads going in, new infrastructure going in. So we've had a lot of developer contributions in the last couple of years. So the pension has always been.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that comes up every year.
So.
Okay. Council, are there additional questions from you so far for Frank or staff? Okay. Frank, do you have, I know you stopped at some point. Do you have more to add, Frank?
Well, I wanted to elaborate a little bit. I heard you asking about depreciation. I wasn't trying to suggest that that's an area of concern. I was just trying to illustrate some of the other estimates that are embedded in your financial statements, which is just an inherent part of the accounting function there where your financial statements have quite a few estimates in there. And in the event that somebody were to miss on an estimate, it could overall have an impact on the operations, the result of operations, or the financial position. Depreciation is a relatively easy thing to do, especially when you talk about things like roads and bridges and everything. They have very long, useful lives. I'm sure council is well on top of it in the context of a long-range plan for managing the growth of the town and updating roads as necessary. So I don't consider that to be a concern, and I certainly didn't intend to give the impression that I was trying to say it was. Relative to the pension funding, we discussed on Thursday that compared to municipalities in other states throughout the country and everything, the towns and cities throughout the state of Texas, with the exception of the really large ones who don't participate in TMRS, are really in pretty good condition. Historically, you can see in Exhibit B5 in your report a history of the funding ratio, and you've been going back to December 31st of 14, you were 86.74% funded. December 31st of 17, 89.98% funded. December 31st of 18, 83.83%. So you're staying pretty consistently in the low to mid, maybe even high 80% funding ratios, which, like I say, are considerably better than some places like Chicago and New York and California. So it's not a huge concern, but it is something that over the long range you need to be conscious of.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Anything else?
Not for me. I just like to express our appreciation for the opportunity to get back and work with the town of Sunnyvale. As I mentioned, we used to do the audit many years ago. I think 2007 was the last time. So we're excited to be back, and it was nice to see the growth there with the new town hall and the development right next door. And look forward to working with you for a few more years into the future.
Okay. Melissa, also you mentioned there are 4 recommendations, right? Do you call it a recommendation, or what is that? These are the ones about policy on, there's a policy issue. Then there are
There's a ransom, there were 4 recommendations. One was,
recommendations, okay.
improve the liability, the pension liability reporting. And then there was the ransomware
Policy.
which Jeff is going to work on, I do believe. There was interfund transfers. That's just, like you said, us getting to know each other. And I'm going to map those for them next year so that they don't have to struggle to figure out if it's, a transfer by my definition or by their definition. So we've got that planned out. And then the master vendor report, that is just something that all communities struggle with. It's a way to control that APAY function. And I think we've got some solutions for that.
Okay. Susan, you mentioned you're going to add that to the project list. That's the
Yes,
one
sir.
follow up.
All 4.
Okay. Council, any questions for on this agenda item? I'm going to open up for public comments. If there are anyone from the members of the audience who would like to speak to the council or to ask questions on this one, please come forward or raise your hand. Joseph, are there anyone?
I see no hands raised. You can press *9 to raise your hand.
If there are no one coming forward, I'm going to close the public comments. Council, are there for additional discussions on this topic? I think you have an action to accept, right? Is that what we call it? Can I say approve agenda item 7, or can I accept the independent auditor's report on financial statement? What's the right?
Accepting.
Okay. Council, can I have a motion to accept the independent auditor's report on financial statements?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the independent audit report. Item
Motion
number
made by
7.
Mr. Freeman. A second. Second by Mr. Clark to accept the independent auditor's report. Everyone heard the motion? Are there additional discussions? All in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 6-0. Mr. Wade is still absent.
He's trying.
I'm sorry? Yeah, no, he's fine. I got it. Moving on to agenda item 3, that's a public hearing portion of the agenda. Hold a public hearing, discuss, consider, and act upon the first reading of ordinance 20-09 An ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Sunnyvale, amending Ordinance 90-22 that made appropriations for the support of the Town of Sunnyvale for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2019 and ending September 30th, 2020, and amending the annual budget of the Town of Sunnyvale for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. Ms. Hopkins?
Mayor and council, it is our habit to take a look at our budget after about 6 months pass so that we can true up some of our, again, estimations that we make as part of our budget process. I'm going to go briefly through the PowerPoint. The second page that you see there, it says mid-year budget. This is all of your funds in one picture, and we'll come back to that. I want to go to the individual funds first. So the first slide is the general fund. I'm just going to hit some of the high points. The bottom line to the general fund budget is we had a zero net change. What we did is we reclassed some line items, but we had a zero net change to the budget. The sales tax receipts, we increased that based on the voter approved 0.25% for 6 months. But we also decreased sales taxes because we're seeing a trend even before COVID-19 struck that they're down about 10%. So the increase, we also reduced by the 10%. So sales tax is something we need to keep our eyes on. With this COVID-19, we think that in May, when we receive those sales tax, our lower construction activity and the effects of COVID-19 will be in that number, and we will have probably our first glimpse at what that's really going to look like. Property tax receipts, we've collected 99% of those, and the past two taxes were increased to actual. Building permits, at the time that we looked at the mid-year, the building activity was still growing pretty strong. In fact, we were earning more in building permits fees than we had budgeted. But to be conservative, what we did is we simply brought those fees to the current level. We didn't trend them up. And part of that was the COVID-19 was beginning to become known then. So we just were very conservative there. Our gas franchise fees came in $76,000 less than what we budgeted. We researched the reason why that happened, and it was warmer temperatures. It's just simply the price of gas, of natural gas, and whether it's really cold or not. And we did reach out to Atmos, and that was the response that we were given on that. So we reduced that to actual. It is paid once a year. Court fines and fees, we also reduced that to trend with our road construction and then COVID-19 hitting, having to close town hall, postpone our hearings and things like that. We felt, excuse me, very conservatively that we needed to reduce those court fines and fees. And we feel like once the police department is fully up and functional and we get past this COVID and we get the road finished, those probably will improve. But for now, we felt it was conservative to go ahead and reduce them. The decrease in expenses, these were just several timing differences, whether it was in payroll, training, or any other initiative that just did not come to bear to our estimates. We reduced those and got to the zero. You still have reserves of $1,370,495. So still 167 budgeted operating days. And that's the general fund. Do I have any questions on that?
Thanks, Liz.
Moving on to the,
Mayor, can you note that Mr. Wade is joining
yes,
us?
he's here.
Yes, the time is 7:30. For the record, Mr. Wade joined the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Wade. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
The water revenue fund had an increase in revenues to include adjustments to contractor meters that we got a bunch of those back. And we had the gain on sale of some replaced vehicles, which came before council. The increase in expenses by 66,260 was payroll cost and that emergency lift repairs that also came before council. So that had a net result decrease in working capital of 40,113. Still good working capital in your water fund. Moving on to the water and sewer impact fee, the expenses were increased to the sewer impact fund to fund the impact fee study that we have to do every 5 years, and I believe that also came before council. The 4B EDC fund, we decreased revenues by 88,250 to include adjustments to, again, the sales tax, a decrease of 10%, and interest earned, we decreased that to current year annualized. Decreased expenses by the same amount to include adjustments to incentives and capital and park improvements. So that fund also had a zero net difference. The other funds, the debt service fund balance increased $2,803 due to the final proceeds and insurance costs related to the 2019 COs. The 4A EDC had no changes, and the escrow balance is expected to be approximately $2,300,000. Road impact, homestead amenities, special revenue, and the PEG fund had no changes. If you will go back to the second page of the slide, again, where it says mid-year budget, these are all of your funds together based on those previous slides we just went through. If you look at the last two columns on your right, you can see approved budget change in fund balance. That was when you adopted the budget back in September. You had $1,170,679, which is your police department. And you can see there was no change during this presentation. So what this column here shows you is the differences between what you approved in September and what we're asking you to amend today. And I'll answer any questions.
And if I could just kind of chime in at the end. So there's a few line items where we did project forward based upon what we're seeing with COVID-19. We did that with court fees that are being collected, just because we had a good sense of what was coming. Where we didn't project forward was on sales tax. And really the reason is we really don't have a sense of how much what reduction we'll see. And Liz had already mentioned that the first time we'll really know or have a sense of that is around the beginning of May. We'll get our sales tax payment from March. And that's the first time that we'll have a sense of that. So as an exercise and just to be kind of forward thinking, we did do some scenarios where we projected out, okay, if sales tax goes down 25%, 50%, and we even did it for 75%, just so that we would know worst case scenario, what would we do to get to the end of the fiscal year and remain in budget? And so there is a list of items that we feel like we would go to first, and they're not in any particular order, but I did send that out as part of the packet of items that we could do as we kind of move through this and it unfolds economically. We know where we're going to go in terms of cutting expenses. And of course, we'd bring that back to you, council, but I just wanted to reassure you that we do know our path forward, and we are very confident that we'll make budget this year. And we're already starting the budget process for next year. And this is the forefront of our minds of how we're going to handle any reductions in revenue. So Liz and I are happy to take any questions.
Okay, let me open up at this time for public comments. If there are anyone from the members of the audience who would like to speak to the council on this topic, please come forward.
It's a public hearing.
It's a public hearing, yes. It's a public hearing agenda item. So anyone from the members of the audience would like to speak to the council, please come forward. Joseph, is there anyone out?
There are no raised hands.
Nobody's raising the hands, so I'm going to close the public hearing and going to turn it over to the council. Council, are there any questions or discussions on this item? Sounds like there are none. Ms. Hopkins, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, sir.
Ms. Guthrie, do you want to add anything else?
No, ma'am. No, sir.
Again, this is the first reading, but I'm going to call for a motion. Council, can I have a motion with respect to ordinance 20-09?
Make a motion to approve ordinance 20-09 as presented. First reading.
Made by Mr. Finch to approve ordinance 20-09 as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mayor.
Second by Mr. Freeman. Everyone heard the motion? Are there additional discussions? If there are none, all in favor signify. Mr. Wade, you're for or against? Okay. All opposed? From where I'm seeing, I'm counting this as a motion passed 7-0. Did I get that right? Okay. Sorry, I couldn't see everybody's hand, that's why. Thank you, Council, and thank you, Ms. Hopkins. Moving on to discussion action items. Item number 4. Discuss, consider, and act upon resolution 20-30, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Sunnyvale, Texas, finding that Encore Electric Delivery Company LLC's application for approval to amend its distribution cost recovery factor to increase distribution rates within the town should be denied. Authorizing participation with Encore Cities Steering Committee, authorizing the hiring of legal counsel and consulting services, finding that the town's reasonable rate case expenses shall be reimbursed by the company, finding that the meeting at which this resolution is passed on is open to the public as required by the law. Acquiring notice of this resolution to the company and legal counsel. That be Ms. Guthrie?
Yes, sir. I think in reading the header of the resolution, it's pretty self-explanatory. For those of you who've been on council a while, this is a very typical thing you see happening, that we normally will decline this and refer it over to the Encore City Steering Committee, of which we're a member of, and then they work through this process with Encore. But I do have Terry Shatter is here, and she's willing to answer any questions if you have them, as am I. But it's a pretty typical item that I think most cities that are a member of this coalition participate in this way and send those items on to them.
Terry, Ms. Shatter, do you have any comments?
I'm going to unmute Terry Shatter.
Yes. Terry, we just unmuted you. Can you hear us?
I think you unmuted Philip.
Ms. Shatter?
No, I'm unmuted the right one.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. No, I don't have any comments. I'm just here to answer any questions if you have any.
Council, are there any questions for Ms. Shatter? Okay, if there are none, I'm going to call for public comments. If there are anyone from the members of the audience who would like to speak to the council on item number 4, please raise your hand or come forward. Joseph, is there anyone?
No, sir.
No one is raising their hands or coming forward. So I'm going to close the public comments. Council, are there additional discussions or comments on this topic? Is there someone trying to speak? Okay.
No, sir.
Okay, if there are none, I'm going to call for a motion on item number 4.
Mayor, I make a motion to accept item number 4, resolution 20-30 as presented.
Motion made by Mr. Allen to approve item number 4. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Finch. Are there additional discussions on this topic? If there are none, all in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 7-0. Thank you, Ms. Shadow, for calling in. I want to go back to the top of the agenda. I want to go back to the recognition. This is a recognition for Councilmember Wade for his service. I have a thing to read, and I will open up for any of the members of the council want to make any comments. I'll open that up. Councilmember Wade is a longtime resident of the town of Sunnyvale. Mr. Wade has served on many of the town's boards and commissions. Further, he joined the town council in 1992 as a council member. In 1993, Mr. Wade was elected as mayor and served in that capacity from 93 to 99. He was then elected again in 2012 and served as a council member through 2020. We appreciate Mr. Wade and his numerous years of service to the town in multiple capacities. Mr. Wade has graciously agreed to serve as the chairperson for the Board of Adjustment. And one of the council members told me when he graduated from high school, Mr. Wade was the mayor. So it was there. That talks about how long he has served in this town.
No, Mayor, that's junior high.
Junior high, okay.
I was in junior high at Sunnyvale when he got elected mayor.
Okay.
Well, I'm the one that's aged.
Trust me, I've aged since then as well.
So I wish we could, hand this in person and take a picture with him, but I'm sure we'll have the opportunity in the near future. So in recognition of service to the town of Sunnyvale, Jim Wade, 16 years of service. Thank you for your dedication. Your service to the citizens of Sunnyvale is greatly appreciated and recognized. Thank you, Mr. Wade.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I look forward to seeing you many more times. I thank the town for this opportunity to serve all these numbers of years. Glad to be here.
Nice, thank you. Hey, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
If you hold it up, we can do a screenshot and memorialize this great moment.
There you go.
You got it, Joseph?
Yeah, I got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, different ways to do things, right? Okay. Now getting back on the regular agenda. Item number 5, discuss, consider, and act upon an advance funding agreement for $91,163.02 with the Texas Department of Transportation for the replacement of the Barnes Bridge Road crossing of Duck Creek, and authorize the town manager to execute the agreement.
We have Lyle that is raised.
Mr. Jenkins? Good evening. Mr.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. What this is, as you know, as we have discussed previously, we have been exploring with the Texas Department of Transportation a application to get into their program to replace the existing Barnes Bridge Road crossing over Duck Creek. This is their 3-year program that I have mentioned to you previously. They have accepted the bridge into the program, but in order for them to start, this is the first step, is to enter into this advanced funding agreement. The town's share, the $91,000, is 10% of their estimate of the total construction cost of the bridge. As I say, because of the 3-year program, this is a separate project from the potential armoring project that we are currently looking into in order to enable the bridge to be reopened safely during that 3-year period. So as I say, this is sort of the first step in order to get TxDOT going on getting the new bridge designed, and then of course construction would follow. With that having been said, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Council, are there any questions for Mr. Jenkins?
So Lyle, this is the ultimate amount that we have to pay. In other words, if the bid comes in twice this, we're still just at 91,000?
Yes, sir, that is correct. Once this has been executed, it's essentially locked into place. So if they get in a design and they realize that they underestimated for whatever reason, the town is not responsible for any additional funds beyond this $91,000 that we're discussing here tonight.
The only exception to that is if we initiate a change of scope. For example, like replacing the water line that's underneath the bridge, or, oh, we want it to be wider because we want a bike lane, or, you know, something that we initiate in terms of scope. And then the other exception is right of way. We don't believe that there's any needed right of way, but if there were, we would have to pay for that as well.
So we already
yes, that's correct. But TxDOT's not just going to come up to us and say, hey, town of Sunnyvale, you need to pay additional money because we omitted something at the beginning.
It's not 10%. We are only liable for the $91,000.
Right.
If the numbers go up, then they are responsible.
That's correct. And we've had that reiterated by 3 different people, including in the contract, but also I've had it verbally with an appointment I had with them. We also have it in writing from the person who sent us the contract. So we're pretty confident that as long as we don't change the scope, then that would be the maximum amount that we would have to pay.
So they already, we talked about, again, remind me again, I know you and we talked about it. We talked about a $3 million estimate. Was it for the same scope or a different scope?
That it was for a similar scope. It was just our best estimate of what it would cost, you know, but they bid a lot of bridges out all over the state every year. So, you know, we are going to have to take them on their knowledge that they know what they're doing, and
For our liabilities
right.
limited, right?
Yes.
Right.
Council, any question for staff?
Yeah, I've got one, and I hate to ask the same question again, because I know that part of our concern about this bridge was further erosion, keeping us from being able to do the bridge as we see it. So again, hating to re-ask this question. So there's further erosion that happens. It then becomes more expensive. That 91's it. So you say scope, but if there's additional erosion to where it becomes a much larger scope of a project, we don't change the scope, but the scope gets changed because of erosion. You're saying 91's good.
Lyle,
That is what TxDOT is. Sorry, Susan.
no, go right ahead. I was going to ask you to answer.
Yes, we did bring up the erosion issue with TxDOT as part of the discussion that Susan was just mentioning a moment ago, and they reiterated the $91,000 is the cap. Again, as Susan said, unless we independently change the scope on our own initiative.
But
erosion would not increase that.
I do want to just add, and this is a conversation the mayor and I had when this item came in, is that we were assuming it was going to be a $3 million project. So we've been kind of in our heads planning for a $300,000 contribution. So right now it's 91,000. I feel like, you know, just to be real, even though they're saying that, I would keep in mind, like in the back of our heads, that it could end up costing us more for exactly something like what you're saying, Jonathan. You know, it's a possibility. Right now they're saying it's 91. We need to sign the contract. We need to lock in the project and start moving forward. But when the mayor asked me, can you guarantee it's going to be 91? I said I couldn't, that I think it'd be a prudent thing to keep, you know, financially in mind that it could be up to 300,000, which is what we originally thought it would be. And I know that's really gray and it's all over the place, but I'm just being very candid with, this is what we know at this moment. So we're sharing that with you, but I wouldn't want to say it couldn't change.
Thank you very much.
Susan, does this change Lyle, does this change our timeline? So we're still talking about entering into a program that's possibly 3 years out. Is that correct?
That's what they've told us at this point, but I do think it's, you know, this came much faster than I expected. I think Lyle probably feels the same way. So, you know, I'm pleased that it's moving forward, but it is in that program year. So we're still 3 years out technically.
So bottom line is, if we do nothing, we're 3 years from having an operational bridge.
That's correct. And just as a reminder that Lyle did issue the RFP for the, the temporary.
For the temporary armoring.
Right. Thanks, Lyle. And so that will come when it closes, which is, I think, another week out. Those bids will come before you and you'll have a decision to make on whether you move forward with that or not. So we've not stopped that just because we got this. We want to leave you that option.
Yeah, one of my fears is.
I'm sorry, those bids are actually scheduled to open on the 30th.
Good. Thank you, Lyle.
Yeah, one of my fears is not only will we have budget issues, but the state is going to have budget issues. And I'm worried about us relying upon a 3-year cycle when all of a sudden they cut their programs because oil is, you have to pay to take the oil now. So I'm a little worried about us just worrying about that. So I'm good as long as we have a dual path, at least right now.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we are moving forward with the armoring.
Are there additional questions or discussions on this topic?
Reminder to press *9 if you have any public comments.
So I'm going to open up for public comments. If there are anyone from the members of the audience who would like to speak to the council, you may raise your hand or speak to the council. Anyone raising the hand, Joseph?
No hands raised.
No hands are raised, so I'm going to close the public comments. Council, are there additional discussions or questions on this agenda item? Lyle, anything else you want to add?
No, sir. I believe I've said everything for right now. We'll continue to move forward.
Okay, if there are no other discussions for count, I'm going to call for a motion on item number 5.
Motion to approve item 5 as presented.
Motion made by Mr. Finch to approve item number 5 as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Clark. Have you heard the motion? Are there additional discussions? All in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 7-0. Thank you, council. Thank you, Lyle. Moving on to item number 6, discuss, consider, and act upon the purchase of data infrastructure for Mark III systems for the police department in an amount not to exceed $194,660 and authorize the town manager to execute the contract. Mr. Yazdan Panahi.
Trying to hide back here. So just to note that this is in line with the police study, and this is for the items for servers, storage, server racks, and UPS. And this is to aid the police department with the functions for the new software that they have coming, which is the CAD RMS software, and additional software that they have, and will provide more redundancy, resiliency, and I'm here to answer any questions that anyone might have about those systems.
Man, this has a lot of technical data included in this details. Council, are there any questions for Joseph? Chief, you want to add anything, sir?
Mayor, Council, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
No, I just, Joseph and I talked and I've told him the systems and the software that I have to have and he said he can make it work. So I've got to trust him on this technical stuff.
And we did compare it to what was in the study, and it's within the same price range, and it also addressed the items that were listed.
Are there multiple systems available? Is it like a benchmark? What is most used, or how did you pick multiple systems?
I compared this solution to a couple of other vendors that I've used in the past and work with. There's attached is additional quotes from Flare Data Systems and another quote from a company called NetSync. And we looked at different server solutions where there's multiple conversion to one, and we looked into different storage solutions. And this, I felt, provided the best bang for the buck for the city and provided the resiliency, the high availability that we need, disaster recovery. I've looked at all those things, and I really, truly think this is the best bang for our buck. And this also comes with a 5-year warranty, hardware maintenance support. So there won't be renewal costs as far as maintenance renewal for 5 years. So that's a really good thing.
So can we switch from this system to a different system after 5 years?
We can.
Or once we are there, you stay with it?
Well, we could switch, but I think this could very well last us even longer than that.
Okay.
And I went ahead and priced the cost. After 5 years, if we wanted to renew maintenance, it would be about $11,000.
So this is hardware and software and support, all of them together?
This does include some backup software for backing up our data. And it does include maintenance. So if there's something that breaks on the server, we would have a new one shipped to us right away. If any of our servers or storage or hard drives or anything failed, that would be covered under the maintenance.
When it's a data infrastructure, is it data or is it hardware or both?
This is mostly hardware. This includes the server racks. This includes the APC rack or UPS backup, battery backup. This includes, there is a line item for backup software, so we can make sure that our servers are being backed up. So this server actually includes many servers on that server. It's just a very large, beefy server. And so it includes also a lot of storage and a way to, if one fails, we can move those servers onto the other ones.
Is that dedicated for the police department or?
This is purchased for the police department primarily. 100%. And this will also aid the city, with supporting them and all their infrastructure.
Okay. Did I open for public comments on this one?
Did he already? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Brenda, did I open for public comments on this one?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm going to open for public comments. If there anyone from the members of the audience would like to speak to the council or ask questions, please raise your hand. Joseph, anyone?
I do not see any hands raised. Press *9 to raise your hand at any time.
No one has raised their hand, so I'm going to close the public comments. Council, are there any questions for Joseph? If there are none, I'm going to call for a motion with respect to item number 6.
Motion to approve item number 6 as presented.
Motion made by Mr. Freeman to approve item number 6 as presented. Seconded by Mr. Clark. Everyone heard the motion? Are there additional discussions? All in favor signify. Mr. Allen? Okay, thank you. All opposed? Motion passed 7-0. Did I get that right? Okay. We already covered item number 7, so I'm going to move on to item number 8. Discuss, consider, and act upon approving 4B budget for B project funding for COVID-19 incentives to local businesses in an amount not to exceed $100,000. Would that be Barton?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Barton. Mr. Barr. Mr. Barr, if you're there, I can hear you.
Is he muted?
Can you all hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
evening.
good evening, Mayor and Council. This item, as you all know, small businesses within Sunnyvale and throughout the region are suffering financial hardships as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result, many of the small businesses are going to experience significant revenue loss. A local business incentive program would likely help support and sustain them during the crisis. At tonight's special 4B meeting, the 4B board approved project funding for COVID-19 incentives for Sunnyvale businesses in an amount not to exceed $50,000. The motion passed unanimously, and some of the key discussion points were having a performance agreement term of 12 months, a maximum award of up to $5,000 per business. The structure of the incentive would be a forgivable loan grant system if the requirements for employee retention were met in the performance agreements. They discussed priority given to businesses with less than 20 full-time equivalent employees. Home-based and nonprofit businesses would be excluded from the program. And in terms of a selection award committee, it was proposed to consist of the town manager, 4B board president Weiss, myself, and at the council's pleasure, the board mentioned having a council member on the selection committee if they desired. Overall, I think the spirit and intent of the board was to create a simple, impactful program to help out the local businesses and ultimately retain jobs. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Let me get the math right. So it's 100,000. They approved 50,000.
Yes, sir.
5,000 maximum. So you're talking about just pure math. You're talking about 10,
Unless,
up to 10 businesses.
unless they had smaller.
Sure, unless the amount is less. Okay. Council, are there any questions for Mr. Barr?
Burton, I got a question or two. So you talked about this 12-month period. Is that 12 months as far as retaining employees for that amount before the loan is forgivable? How does that work?
I think some of the details would still need to be ironed out, but that I think the general direction was that you would need to retain those employees for a period of time that would be spelled out in that performance agreement. At that point in time, it would be possible for it to be forgiven.
All right, and my second question is coming off the heels of Governor Abbott's proclamation today that we're going to start slowly opening back up the state of Texas for business. Are we late on this? I mean, is this something that is actually going to help businesses over the next, I would assume it would take, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks to get this thing rolled out. Is this something that's actually going to help businesses in the time when it's needed? Or by the time we get through doing all this, the business is going to be back open?
A similar question came up at 4B, and in consultation with the 4B's attorney, Mr. Jeff Moore, he talked about some strategies, at least in the performance agreement, that might address. There's the 60-day waiting period, things of that nature, but there were some strategies that could be implemented in terms of should a petition be filed, we would have language in the performance agreement that would require any fees, any funds that were awarded would have to be paid back immediately. I can't say that I can't answer your question in 100% in terms of, we do know we do have some businesses identified that have requested help. We've had a lot of conversation with businesses that say that they might need help, but they don't know exactly what that is. So I don't know if that answers your question at all, but
I appreciate it, Burton. Thank you.
I would just say this, I think in consulting with some of the other communities about their programs, a lot of the different communities are using different funding sources. Some of them are using type A funds that don't require some of the same procedural elements, which allowed them, quite frankly, to have access to those funds and make these programs move quicker. And there was also some other communities that had, some task force type local groups, local community folks that were working on all of these things. So there was a lot of structural elements that were already in place for some of these other places that were able to advance everything.
Mr. Freeman, let me give you my thought. Susan and I talked about this one, and our staff has to start reaching out to local businesses, calling them proactively and say, okay, what can we do for you? We realize Sunnyvale is a small town, our funding is limited, but showing that the care, right? Trying to say, you know what, we want you here. We are willing to help you in some way or fashion. We may not be able to give them all the money they need. They get the money, 5,000, may or may not keep them afloat. But if we can give them a helping hand, we take the tax and property tax, right? This is the time, I think we need to turn back and offer them help. And in my mind, I told Susan, if 4B funding is not enough, I said, I'm open to the idea of bringing that to the council for your consideration and approval, because we have funding from the 4A money set aside. Again, I said, I am open to bringing that agenda item to the council. And at the end, it's your decision. It's all about giving them help. But one thing I would say, if the process takes a long time and the process is complicated, again, we have to be judicious about the money given, no doubt, right? We can just hand out a check to everybody. I got it. We got to be careful and judicious about the tax dollar, the money. At the same time, I think we got to act without too much delay. In other words, we can get stuck in this do loop or process checks and documentation. There got to be a balance somewhere. Being careful and judicious at the same time, doing it expeditiously. So I did talk to Susan about it, and I want to try to do something from the town, whether it's a 4B or a council or both. So whether this will solve that problem, I don't know the answer, right? If they are $5,000 may or may not be enough for them, then we may need to consider that one. But I would like to keep every single business in this town and hopefully help them get through this crisis. That's really my 2 cents.
Mayor, I might add some comments. I actually listened to the virtual meeting of the 4B this afternoon and actually participated a couple of times as a public member. I think they had good spirits there. I think this is a great effort to assist our businesses. I think there was still some uncertainty as how we're going to do it. They did receive, and maybe you received today also, some different city proposals of what other cities are doing. The unfortunate part is all of them are larger than we are. So we had to structure something that makes sense for Sunnyvale. We think we have a lot of businesses here, But we want to be very careful that we do it in a way that doesn't discriminate or doesn't show too much discretion that is detrimental to the businesses. Some of the things that, they quickly eliminated was home-based businesses, nonprofits. We know in the media, public companies have certainly taken a beating with regards to these government programs that have come out. And we have several public companies in our town. So also was thrown out in the case of some cities was the franchise businesses or chain restaurants and so forth not being able to participate. And of course, we don't have too many restaurants in Sunnyvale. In fact, we only have 6, and 2 of those are probably a chain. So there's an opportunity here for a lot of businesses to participate, our cleaners, the pharmacy, perhaps those 4 restaurants, as long as we don't make the requirements too difficult for them to participate, but yet at the same time, make sure we understand what we're helping accomplish. $5,000 or $50,000 is a program limit approved by 4B. That's not going to provide a lot of money for each business, especially if they all qualify somehow for $5,000 apiece. That's only 10. I would hope that some of our businesses have applied for the SBA loans, the PPP. I know they've been slow to come out. I know several who haven't received any, and we're still working to get those done. But this is going to be a step in the right direction. It's going to take a bit of effort on some folks' part. I hate to put this on Susan and Burton, who are already short-staffed. But also, I don't want to create a program that's a monster and take 6 weeks to get started. Somehow we can get this started real quickly with some great effort and a small application, maybe by taking some of these examples from other cities. I know if you have a chance, look at the Cedar Park one. Very concise. It's very, very to the point. I don't think we can duplicate Cedar Park. We're not that size. Our businesses probably can't participate in the requirements as easily as those in Cedar Park can, but that's a great one to look at in my opinion. So I think this is an effort in the right direction. Compliment 4B on doing it. I am concerned that we be very careful, because as we do this, we're using park money, we're using new business incentive money. We know that we've got increased debt coming up, and they may need to assist with that. Also, we have to realize that our sales tax revenues are down. They're not going to be replenished quickly. The longer these businesses stay shut or in takeout mode, it's going to be hard to recover those sales tax dollars. In addition, some of these businesses that we might decide qualify, perhaps don't even pay sales tax. So 4B gets no replenishment off of helping these businesses. So I think all those factors have to be considered. But the biggest one is, what do we need to do to help our business community get back up and running in some way? Just some thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Wade. Council, are there additional discussions on this topic?
Mayor, I have a question. I don't know if this is for Jim or for Burton or whoever. Internet was kind of in and out, so I just wanted to be sure that I heard this correctly, that the max amount of this program is $100,000.
No, it was 100,000 on the agenda, and 100,000 is what we advertised. But the 4B only approved up to 50,000 today. And so and their comment was, if we give out the 50,000 and we feel like there are still more in need, then we could come back to 4B and the council for the additional 50,000, but they only wanted to go up to 50 in this first round.
And thank you. My second question is, just to clarify, this is not going to apply to home businesses. Is that correct?
They did exclude that in the 4B motion, that no home-based businesses or nonprofits would be included.
Okay. I think it's a great idea. I don't know that it'll really help anybody a lot, but at least it's there if somebody needs a little help. So I think it's good PR for the town.
All right. So I have a question. It sounds like this is all moving very quickly, and 4B just voted on this earlier today. Do we have a plan? So far, is there a plan to make a process? What is that? What's the next step if we approve this? Is there a roadmap?
Yeah. So the 4B actually named Mr. Weiss, President Weiss, Burton, and myself as the kind of subcommittee that would work on putting together, the actual application materials, given the parameters that they've already given us. Again, we sent out to them a whole list of links of programs that other cities have. Plus, our 4B attorney has done several of those programs for other cities. So we have a lot of materials to draw from. So literally tomorrow, Burton and I will start working on putting together what the application materials will look like and what the process will be to get the word out. One of the nice things is leading up to this, Burton and our librarian, Matthew, and his team, we got a list of every business in town, and we've been proactively calling them and reaching out to them and trying to populate a really good database. So, for this program and for future programs, we'd have solid contact information and how to communicate with them. So we'll use that to get the word out on this program. And also Terry from the chamber, she's on the 4B board, so she'll, I'm sure, help us with that as well. So, we'll be developing that process over the next couple of days, but we're not doing it in the dark. We have a lot of examples to draw upon.
Thank you.
I want to jump back in. I've got this when I'm thinking about this, and Larry said the right word. I think the gesture is good, but is this PR or is this going to be impactful? And I'm not sure. Keep in mind, would it be great if we could just throw 250,000 up? Would be great, but we just don't. We can't do that for obvious reasons. 50,000 is probably the right number. Maybe 100, but is that impactful? Or again, is this just a nice gesture? Because I'm all for helping out businesses as much as we possibly can. However, are we putting something together that is going to be, PR and a nice gesture, but isn't going to be impactful? That's my large concern about this program. Any thoughts?
Jonathan, I think there was some of that discussion there today in the 4B meeting. You're right. It isn't going to be terribly impactful. I mean, I don't know what it costs to run, who knows, on a month, just to call it one of our big businesses, or Subway on a month. But I know that 5,000 doesn't cover my payroll for a month. It gets about a month and a week of rent. So it doesn't make a big difference to some of these businesses, and I'm little compared to those businesses. So it isn't. It's kind of a gesture, I guess you might say. So it isn't very impactful. But as was pointed, and the reason it went from 100,000 to 50 is big cities are only doing 100. So it was like, well, we're certainly not one of those big cities that was in the 10 or 12, 15 examples that were given to us. I mean, Austin, I think, announced $23 million. Well, we can't do those kinds of things. As I said a while ago, we only have 6 restaurants. We got one cleaners. We got one pharmacy. If we eliminate the big public company, it's not very impactful.
Question, Susan, have we thought about, Burton, have we thought about if a business has applied for the Federal Payroll Protection Act and received funds from them, will we limit them from this program?
I noticed, and Burton chime in on this too, we noticed that on a lot of the applications for other cities, they had a disclaimer that said, you know, you need to check if this impacts your ability to get funding from another program, you know, to put the onus on them. I didn't think we should exclude it just because they have you know, on our part, just because I don't think they should be penalized because they went and were proactive and got things that they needed to get. Burton, did you read anything else that you want to add to that?
Not really. I mean, that, you know, I prepared kind of a draft, kind of a loose framework of modeling it after another community. But yeah, I mean, they pretty much put that disclaimer in there that said, you know, that accepting these types of funding may or may not impact your things with the PPP or the SBA programs. And just to kind of follow up on what you all have discussed in terms of whether it's going to do a lot, you know, I asked that question of some of the other communities that I reached out to, and I think the overriding message that I heard from them was that they know that there's a delay, especially with the SBA programs and some of the others, and that if there was some sort of short-term stopgap relief to do something while those other funds are being refunded, being replenished, and more of those applications are processed. That was some of what I heard from the other communities, knowing full well that it wasn't going to solve everyone's problems, but it was going to, if it could help some, the smallest of the businesses.
Well, that raises a kind of a bigger question for me, because I know there's some time lag in this, but then they're fully funded. And so I know I've experienced with the few businesses that get these dollars. And so I'd hate for us to provide funding to somebody that was fully funded through the federal program that's now being replenished and people can apply again. So I want to help businesses that need the help and maybe didn't get those other kind of funds. And so if we can divert money to those businesses that didn't get funds from the federal government, then that's where I'd rather focus. That's the only kind of pushback I'm going to have on this, is that I want to make sure that we use whatever funds they are appropriately, and that we don't have a business that's double dipping on federal funds and city funds. And I want to send the money where it needs to go that can do the most impact and most help. And so I realize there's a delay, but hey, I know that millions of businesses were just funded. And so if they've applied and didn't get the funds, then I think we would look at that. But if they've applied and received federal funds, I would not in favor of funding them anymore.
I think, you know, as we get this committee together, I think that's the question that has to be on there. Have you applied for and/or SBA loans, PPP loans? So, I mean, yeah, I'm with Ryan on this one. I'd want the money to go to where it can make the biggest impact, not necessarily someone just trying to grab as much money as they can.
Okay.
So at least for me, sounds like everybody seems to be in favor of allocating or approving this $50,000 from 4B. But there are some questions, maybe suggestions on how the process should be laid out.
Yeah, we've got them. We'll include them. And does anyone from this? Yeah.
Does anyone from the?
I would love to be a part of that committee.
Mr. Freeman is going to be. Anyone else wants to be a member of the committee? We can pick one. Okay, Jonathan, I think you got the, everybody's good with Jonathan? Sounds good. Thank you, Jonathan, for signing up. So Susan, you're going to keep us posted on the process.
Yes, sir. We can put an update in each Friday update
Okay.
on where we're at with this. And, you know, you all know anytime
But
you
when it's
have,
each Friday, is that going to take that long to get the process approved?
I really hope not, sir.
Okay,
We'll work quickly. But we'll keep you updated and, you know, anytime you have a question, just go ahead and call me or Burton.
Okay.
He's done, I mean, it was very impressive work on this.
Okay.
Just in 24 hours. I mean, he filtered through like tons of other cities' programs. He did a really great job. So I want to thank him for helping me move this forward so quickly.
thanks, Mr. Barr. I'm going to open up for public comments. If there anyone from the members of the audience would like to speak to the council on this item, please raise your hand.
Press *9 to raise your hand.
Anyone, Joseph?
No.
No one is coming forward, so I'm going to close the public comment. Council, are there additional discussions on this topic? So if there are none, I'm going to make it, I'm going to read a motion. Brenda or Susan, please correct me, right? So I think this is to approve 4B project funding for COVID-19 incentives to local businesses in an amount not to exceed 50,000. And also appointing Mr. Freeman to this task team from the council. Is that a good enough resolution?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. Council, that's a suggested motion. If someone can make that motion, please.
I'll make that motion as stated by Mayor George.
Motion made by Mr. Clark. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Allen. Everyone heard the motion? Are there additional discussions? All in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 7-0. Mr. Barr and Ms. Capri, I'm going to say, if you run into more needs, at least come back to the council and give us an opportunity to discuss this further in addition to the 4B.
We will. Thank you, sir.
At least that council can decide at that time they want to move forward or not.
Yes, sir.
Moving on to item number 9, discuss the current COVID-19 Dallas County order in place, as well as impact to the town of Sunnyvale organization and community. Would that be Ms. Capri?
Yes, sir. I'm going to start it off and then I'll probably turn it over to Councilmember Allen. Can you pull up the PowerPoint? So Joseph is going to pull up a PowerPoint and I'm just going to go through it really quickly. First of all, I want to thank Erica who helped put this together. She's been staying on top of this situation and helping me monitor everything that is going on. Obviously in the fire chief sitting at the back of the room, hiding back there. But, and then the other thing is, you know, this is a moving target. So we did our best to encapsulate everything. If you can put it in presenter mode, that would be.
Sure.
Thanks. Okay. And go ahead to go to the next slide. So it's
I can see.
yeah, it's a little bit of a moving target, but we're going to do our best to pull together everything that we know right now. So you could see on this chart, right today, they reported 91 new cases in Dallas County. So our total is 3,105 cases in Dallas County. The graph just really illustrates how many of those are hospitalized, which is what's in red versus what's in blue. And then you see just the line that's going up is our cumulative numbers. So you really aren't seeing it drop off yet or even really showing plateau. We had 2 new deaths reported today, which brings our total number of deaths to 84. 1/3 of those are associated with long-term care facilities. Okay, next slide. The current order in the state of Texas that was in place prior to today, he had 3 executive orders the governor did that began the process of reopening And basically it was the retail to go model, which was, people could drive up curbside, get things brought out to their car or delivered. Schools will remain closed for the remainder of the academic year. And he also, during that executive order, appointed a strike force to open Texas. Today, he had another press conference, and these were the big takeaways. Go ahead and go to the next slide. These were the big takeaways that we would continue, of course, with retail to go. And then as of May 1st, would be what he called phase 1, which was things like malls and movie theaters, etc., may open at 25% capacity. What was not included were nail salons, hair salons, bars, or gyms. And I kind of want to interject on this point that when we did the survey of all of the Sunnyvale businesses, a few of those that said, yes, I do need help, were the salon, that kind of genre of business. So I thought that that was interesting because right now they're not slated to be able to open May 1st. He said probably the earliest they would look at those would be May 18th. He said that they would reevaluate that around May 17th and see if, through the actions of what they're opening it up in phase 1 causes any spiking of cases. And one of the things they talked a lot about was doing a lot more testing and really tracing those people who test positive so that they can notify others. So he did caution to not be concerned if the number of cases spiked, but whether they really were looking at was how do our hospitals keep up? How are we doing in that manner? So he did mention reevaluating and looking at additional businesses to open as of May 18th. Their goal is to do 25,000 tests per day. They're opening a call center for doing the contact tracing when they have positives. Did continue to emphasize social distancing and protecting those that are most vulnerable. And he talked a little bit about businesses making sure they're making accommodations for those most vulnerable populations and how they're providing services. So next slide. So in Dallas County, on the current order that's in place right now, it's requiring face coverings. But the governor today said they highly recommend them, but weren't requiring them. So here's where you start seeing a little bit of the differences. And please note that we have not had our next call. We do a call every day at noon with the county judge and all the emergency managers. So we have not heard directly from him on how this will dovetail
We
together.
didn't have one today, right?
Um,
Did we have one today?
no.
I don't think so.
They already, did the retail to go. He agreed with that. He had already removed elective surgery language to be consistent with the governor's last order. Allowed auto dealerships to be open. And then again, on religious and worship services, again, to be consistent with the governor's prior orders, they had changed worship services to be strongly encourage them to use like teleconferencing, but didn't say they couldn't meet. So there really wasn't a lot that was in contradiction to the governor's order. I think he modified his last order to get in, to be compliant with that. So my expectation is that's probably going to be the same thing that happens this time. In Sunnyvale, our current situation, next slide. We have from DCHHS is confirming 8 total cases within the town of Sunnyvale as of, I think it was last Thursday. So they do those Friday. They do those, put that out on Tuesdays and Fridays. So that was our last case count. All of our town facilities are closed to the general public, but as you know, we've remained open for business, all departments except for the library. The library was the only department that, really shut down operations, and they've been doing other services like helping the fire department with tracking of data, helping looking at grants, things like that. All of our employees, we're taking temperatures every day before the shift. The fire department has been doing that for us. We've got people on varying shifts so that we don't have all of our staff in one place at one time, including, like, for example, Public Works. Half of our shift works half of the week, and then we've got another shift that's working over the weekend, just to make sure that we don't have people working on the same day. We have a lot of people telecommuting, and then we are disinfecting before and after each shift. We really won't know the extent of our budget impact until May 11th. I went over that during our discussion of the mid-year budget. The next slide, community outreach. I just really wanted to just touch on that because I think it's really important. The library staff has been calling our businesses, I shared that, but they've also been calling our patrons that are over age 65 to check up on their well-being, see if they need anything. I got some texts from residents just thanking me for that. 100 Women of Sunnyvale have been doing a lot of outreach, and they really were trying to help people who are most vulnerable, who might not want to go out to the stores to get supplies, things like that. Several of the churches are doing programs. These are the few that kind of responded to our requests for information, whether it's reaching out to their membership or providing food assistance. So that's been very nice. There are also a lot of residents who are making and donating masks. I know Councilmember Clark's wife even called us, Sarah Clark, called and asked if we needed anything. So just, I wanted to touch on that because it's just so, I think, wonderful to see everyone stepping up and trying to help each other. The next slide, economic development. We talked about the outgoing calls, so I won't go over that again. And then the incentive that we just talked about on our last agenda item was hot on our minds. Next slide. So really the next question we had is, when do we want to reopen town facilities? And I got a plan today from the library to do a library to go option, and where people could request materials and then have them brought out when they drive up. I think that's a really nice interim step. So he sent a plan to Rachel and I, and we're going to go over it and try and fine tune it and try to roll that out as soon as possible so that we can get that department reopened, which was really the only department that wasn't providing services to the public. On the court side, we're going to be in communication with our judge, but Rachel, who's over the court, did read what agency was that from? What is it?
Office of Court Administration.
Okay, the Office of Court Administration is recommending that lower courts not open until June 1st. So we're going to monitor that, and we talked today about maybe some ways that we could do it and do it safely. But right now, I think we really need to confer with our judge and look at our caseload and see what she feels is best in terms of reopening court. We've been open to the public in terms of answering questions, processing payments, things like that. We just haven't held court per se. We want to comply with all the state orders, of course. When we're ready to reopen the front counter, we're a few weeks out still from getting our glass installed as part of our renovation. So if we need to open sooner, we can do plastic sheeting to try to protect our employees. We are struggling with wearing PPE. We really have been trying to do that when we're in any kind of setting where we're by each other. We would ask that customers wear masks. We really want to continue to encourage the public to use our online businesses. We've really done pretty well with that. We've used the drop box out front. People have, for a building permit, put their payment and their application in that drop box. We're checking it several times a day. And then the same with utility billing. We have the ability to pay online or drop a payment in that drop box. So we'd really like to do that, but there are those people who need more attention, more a higher level of service. So our thought is to start, maybe doing it by appointment, or, hey, call this number and we'll let you in, but not just, open everything up. And one of the reasons is, not only is it the public coming in, but it's in order to accommodate that, we have to have all of our staff here, and we still want to try to keep social distancing in place. So we think if we can keep pushing the online services, we can open it up for people who really need to come in, like maybe they don't have access to any kind of electronics and need to pay cash or whatever. So, and then again, allowing those who telecommute to do so, and then continuing as at least for the next till the May date, we'd like to continue with keeping our staff on staggered schedules so that they're not all together up, working in close proximity. And again, that's really our continuity plan, because if one of them were to get ill, then we have no continuity plan, and we'd have to quarantine all of them. So our goal is to not have them all together at one time. And that's really my presentation. And I really did want to turn it over to Councilmember Allen, who asked to have this on the agenda. So I want to make sure we've answered questions, or at least, made it, teed it up for his comments.
Ms. Allen? Is he open? Joseph?
Sorry.
You hear me?
Just give us 1 second, Ms. Allen.
Yeah, he should be fine.
Ms. Allen, can you speak? Say hi.
Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I had to move. I apologize. I have too many people using the Wi-Fi in my house doing multiple things right now. So I had to move. First of all, I want to tell you, Susan and Erica, thank you for putting this together. I don't mind telling you that a week and a half ago, my frustration level was at its peak, and I thought there were some things that needed to be addressed from our town.
I think you froze for a second. We can't hear you anymore.
Perspective, and I think you answered. Kevin, can you hear me okay?
Yes. I think you froze.
You're freezing up.
Might need to post any Netflix or anything else going on in the house.
Did you hear that, Ms. Allen?
Now, what do you say?
Joseph was suggesting that if there are any sort of video, Netflix or something, you may want to close it, at least for a short time.
Yeah, I'm working on that. Hang on just a second.
Yes, sir.
We wouldn't have this problem if we just opened things back up. I'm just saying.
I couldn't imagine me having to get Netflix cut off in the house right now.
Well, that's a pretty big assumption because I don't think I have Netflix going right now, but I'll take that as a suggestion. My wife is standing behind me.
Okay, but we can hear you though.
They can hear me now, though.
Taking off the background might help too.
Yeah.
You may want to take, hey, Alan, one other thing he, Joseph mentioned, you may want to remove that background. He said that may also consume some of it. Okay?
Not willing.
So I'll keep saying, this to you. Much better.
There you go.
Wait, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean much better?
I said I can hear you much better.
I wouldn't say anything. I think you just slandered my U.S. Air Force, but I'll take it. Okay, if you can hear me, that's great. So I just want to go back to where I left off and say, Susan and Erica, thank you for getting this stuff together. There were a lot of concerns about a week and a half ago. A lot changed today. I still have some questions, and I'm sure council will as well. A couple of things I wanted to go back to is we're still chasing a moving target from the county and the state. And this is going to change. I got a text during the meeting that apparently Governor Abbott had a meeting with several local salons tonight, so that may change more quickly than phase 2, as he mentioned on the news today. A couple of things that stand out really quick. One, I want to talk about the conflict between the state and the county and where we're going to be as a city on this. Second thing I want to talk about, Chief Hawkins, this is probably going to fall on you, that Abbott said today in the conference call that enforcement would be dependent upon the local enforcement. I just want to see where we're at on that. Not that I'm advocating for that. I just wanted to see where we were. Susan, thank you for reaching out to those that are 65 and older, or whoever you may be reaching out to. A question I have for that is, do we have a hotline for anybody that needs to get very quick, up to date? And I don't know what I'm looking for here, but do we have any kind of a hotline in our town where someone can call and get quick service if they needed something with regards to COVID?
Yes, either the library or actually all of our frontline personnel have been given like a fact sheet that Erica put together for us, so people would know where to call. And then our e-news blast has my email on the bottom, Erica's email on the bottom, and our contact phone numbers. So any of those avenues will work.
Okay, I guess a better question to reword that is, do we think that we have that out for our elderly residents in a manner, and I say elderly, it could be anybody, that could get to that easily if they needed to?
Well, I know that I'm trying to think of the people who have been touch pointing them. So the 100 Women of Sunnyvale have been touch pointing them. And I know that if they get questions that they can't answer, they know to refer them to me. The library is doing direct calling to them so that they're, offering, hey, if you have questions or if you need anything, call us back. We have not done a print e-news or print newsletter mailed out. It was really a budgetary issue. We had to skip an issue. So we can get one of those out. But the primary thing has been the people who subscribe to our e-newsletter, and then we put it on social media as well.
Okay. I just want to point out, when you look at the charts and graphs they put relative to numbers, these charts make it look really bad. And it looks really, really bad. But if you stretch that out over a period of time, it's not nearly as impactful as these charts make it look to be. And so that always has concerned me, not from our town, not from anything you did, Susan, but from the county and the state. Again, I know everybody is in a different place on this topic, and I want to be respectful for where everybody feels with that. But I wanted to be sure with one thing very specifically: how is our hospital doing? And you answered that. Our hospital is good. Our hospital is not overwhelmed. Our hospital is not lacking for accommodations. We have everything we need, right?
So I had shared with you that I did reach out to our local hospital here in Sunnyvale twice. The first time I think was last week, early last week, and just asked them, how's everything going? Is there anything that we could do for you? And the response was back, that things were going fine. And was there anything they could do for us? So I did, after you had approached me to have this agenda item, I did send a much more detailed email, just trying to probe, but I did not receive a response back yet. But again, it was just last week when I, was told that everything was fine. But, I didn't at that point ask them about anything very specific. So I tried to drill down this week, but again, didn't get a response yet.
I appreciate that. Susan, they said today, and I'm sure probably everybody on this conference today heard at least part of the broadcast today, but we fully expect the possibility of the increased cases and possibly deaths will go up as we start the herd immunity. So I just want to be sure that we're not in a panic mode if those numbers go up a little bit. That's just my perspective. but the two things I really want to hammer in on now is it appears that we're in a conflict between our state governor and our county. And I'm sure that Brenda will want to weigh in on this. And I'm also sure that Jenkins will modify his order, but we have a conflict. And it's my opinion that we should be following what the governor of the state says. And so I want to see where we're at on that topic as a community and as a town. Brenda, can you weigh in on that and let us know where we're at?
Sure. So what Governor Abbott has done is said that cities and counties cannot pass orders that are inconsistent with his orders. But I'll give you an example. You know, Colleyville is all over the news because there they allowed outside dining with social distancing requirements in restaurants. And the governor said in a quote that he believed that the mayor had respected his orders and that that order was in comportment with his own orders from the governor's office. And so I think that's going to be up for interpretation. There are already lawsuits to talk about whether cities, home rule cities in particular, have the authority to rule outside of the governor's declarations, because home rule cities derive their authority from the Constitution, not from the legislature. And so that's already in the court system. We're not going to know the answer to that question for some time. I would think, to the extent that a municipality chose to follow the state orders, that would probably be a safe position. I also don't know to what extent Dallas County would go after a city that perhaps violates Judge Jenkins or the commission's orders. You know, last week we saw the commission take a little bit, the county commission take a little bit of authority back when they said, well, the county judge has said everyone has to wear face masks, but we're not going to allow enforcement of that provision. Okay, so there is this tension between, you know, who has the authority. I don't think it's going to flesh out, but as the governor begins to sort of implement his phased reopen strategy, I think a lot of cities are going to sort of be able to take a breath. The one thing that I didn't think was covered in the PowerPoint was that retail stores may also open as of May 1 at 25% capacity.
I think that Susan had that in there on slide 2 or 3. That I think that was in there.
I thought it was malls and restaurants, but I didn't. It said retail was still to go curb, and that's true until Friday, and then Friday that changes.
Right. So, you know, I'm of the opinion, based on where we're at now, and this, I know I'm just one party in this conversation, but that if we're in a conflict, that we should fall more in line of the leniency side of this with regards to where the governor is, versus trying to run around as a town and try to start enforcing things that that actually hurts our town in some areas. So where are we going to be on that? I know, Chief, you're running a department that's standing up and moving on, and I don't know that you would be involved in any of that at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
so I can speak to that as well. Some communities have
I'm not really sure what you're saying, but let's just say the restaurant and opened up their outdoor. Are we there? Yeah, where are we at? Where are we at? Do we need to be at anywhere on that topic?
I
can-
would say no, because I have cities that have formally said, you know, restaurants that put up additional temporary signage that they're open and that they have to go curbside service, they've said we are taking no enforcement action on our sign ordinance in an effort to help their businesses. And so unless there's an unsafe condition or someone who's seriously violating the rules, Addison is one of my clients. I think the only citation that they discussed issuing was to a retailer who refused to close, who was not an essential business.
And I can tell you that we have only responded to complaints, and you know, we've sent DSO out on a few complaints, and then we had one that we did through, it was a major employer, and we did it through code compliance and the fire department from a health safety standpoint, but it was an education visit, was not a enforcement visit. And that's the approach that we've taken. So to my knowledge, we've not done any real overt enforcement, just more education.
Chief, you got anything to add on to any of that? I'm not looking.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a couple things in law enforcement on this. For one, I believe governor's order as far as the mask wearing, and Brenda, if you want to jump in, there's no, you can't penalize anybody by fine or jail on the mask issue. So if you don't have a penalty, you don't have an enforcement. So that's that on that. I don't know where Dallas County is on any of this stuff as far as the sheriff directives go. I can tell you that there's starting to be some uprising in state police unions. I know that the Texas Municipal Police Association has sent a letter to the Harris County judge complaining about their enforcement order. So I don't know if other urban counties are going to follow suit on that. I can provide y'all with the copy of that letter. So, and then the other issue is in law enforcement, you know, do we want to put people in jail and stuff like this when they're letting other people out of jail so they don't get sick? I think the best thing to do is follow the governor's recommendation and his orders above all.
Ding, ding, ding. There's the winner right there. I have another question. I don't know that Governor Abbott addressed our parks today. Maybe he did. He did address golf specifically and tennis. And I guess I can assume that our driving range, if they wanted to, could open back up on Beltline. Is that? Yes. Okay. Where are we at on social gatherings? I know people in the community have started out trying to avoid everybody, and now we're starting to see. Was there anything in Governor Abbott's stuff today? I didn't hear anything that. I mean, this whole order terminates in 3 or 4 days.
Correct.
He had a comment about the state park, and I don't recall exactly.
So with that, does all this minimum social gathering, you want to get people together at your house?
So we listened to his press conference, and we do have downloaded his whole book that he kept referencing. So I can do more research and see if he addresses that there. But the state parks, as the mayor commented, he said we're going to be reopening or had reopened.
I can't remember. He mentioned something.
I'll look at it. What?
Day passes.
Okay, the day passes. So we can look at that as part of our transition plan too, of reopening the parks. I mean, but I think, you know, order or not order, the virus is still out there, and I think we need to respect that and try to encourage, you know, that's different than mandating, but encourage the social distancing. So we'll follow up on what's in his report, and I'll let you know.
Mayor, I do have the summary of the governor's order, if you all would like for me to go through those bullet points with you.
Please do.
Sure. Starting on, so first of all, it says it keeps stay home work, home, and place except for essential or reopening services while following appropriate guidelines. Continues to order that retail services may be provided through pickup, delivery, mail, or delivery to the customer's doorstep. In addition, starting on Friday, May 1st, it opens up the following: in-store retail services for retail establishments that operate at up to 25% of the total listed occupancy of the retail establishment. Dine-in restaurants for restaurants that operate at up to 25% of the occupancy of the restaurant, provided, however, that this applies only to restaurants that have less than 51% of their gross receipts from the sale of alcoholic beverages. So that eliminates bars, and are therefore not required to post the 51% sign. And then valet services are prohibited except for vehicles with placards or plates for disabled parking. Movie theaters may open that operate at up to 25% of the total listed occupancy of any individual theater for any screening. Shopping malls that operate at up to 25% of the total listed occupancy of the shopping mall, provided, however, that within shopping malls, the food court, dining areas, play areas, and interactive displays and settings must remain closed. Museums and libraries that operate at up to 25% of the listed occupancy, provided, however, that local public museums and local public libraries may so operate only if permitted by the local government. And B, any components of museums or libraries that have interactive functions or exhibits, including child play areas, must remain closed. This one is for Texas counties that have filed with DSHS and are in compliance with the requisite attestation form promulgated by DSHS regarding 5 or fewer cases. Well, that doesn't count for you guys. So services provided by an individual working alone in an office may resume. Golf course operations, local government operations, including county and municipal government operations relating to permitting, recordation, and document filing services as determined by the local government. Other things that may be enumerated in the future by the governor. Again, the conditions and limitations do not apply to essential services. And then the order also covered religious services, and that includes weddings and funerals. People shall avoid, so here's the prohibition: bars, gyms, public swimming pools, interactive amusement venues such as bowling alleys and video arcades, massage establishments, tattoo studios, piercing studios, or cosmetology salons. The use of drive-through pickup or delivery option for food and drinks remains allowed and highly encouraged. Okay, here's where we get to. The executive order does not prohibit people from accessing essential or reopened services or engaging in essential daily activities like going to the grocery store or the gas station. Visiting parks, so it does not prohibit people from visiting parks, hunting or fishing, or engaging in physical activity like jogging, bicycling, or other outdoor sports, so long as the necessary precautions are maintained to reduce the transmission of COVID-19 and to minimize in-person contact with people who are not in the same household. You cannot go to nursing homes, and the schools remain closed. So that was the bulk of his order today.
So I apologize for consuming this time, but just a couple more questions. It appears that if Little League Soccer and Little League Baseball wanted to practice in groups of 4,
yes,
it appears they could do that and
yes,
not have a problem as a town with that.
yes.
Okay. This question probably doesn't apply to many people, but in the event you have a federal institution inside your state, who governs, the federal law or the state law?
Again, I think that's going to play out in the court system. I'm not aware at this point that the president has really issued any orders, and he has specifically said he is leaving it to the states to determine how to begin reopening.
So the state, historically, the state does not have jurisdiction over federal property or federal people working in those federal properties as far as that goes contingent. So that would still stand then, right?
Yes, that would still stand.
I think that's all I have for right now. I'll back out and let some other people talk for a little bit.
So, Mr. Allen, before you hang up, do you recommend any changes from where we are and the path we are taking at this time?
You probably don't want me to go down that road right now. I had a whole lot of problems and concerns until about 2:30 this afternoon as I watched Colleyville, Georgetown, and some other states across our state start to have some input back to the governor and said, hey, listen, you're killing our businesses. You're killing the individual people that are working hard to make a living. And yet these people are starting to open and everybody trying to comply was shut down. So I would have asked before tonight, that we as a council or our mayor start trying to provide some pushback to to the governor and say, hey, maybe we're ready to open. And that would be a collective decision. Again, I'm just one voice in here. But I'm not in favor based on what we know, what the data, I'll use the term, what the science says. I'm not sure that the science says crater your entire town's business. And we are going to see this is going to get worse economically and financially in the next few months before it gets better. So I had some real concerns before tonight. I believe that the governor has opened those doors. And I think that the questions that the chief and Susan and Brenda answered, I wanted to be sure that our community, because they're going to have some questions, what can they do? And I think we've answered that tonight. And I know that most of our community is not listening, but I wanted to be sure that we're not going to go to parks where there's groups of 3 or 4 that are playing baseball or softball, and we're going to get overzealous as a community on those. And as well as, our favorite little store down here on the corner of Beltline, they have a huge outside eating area. And if we start seeing them apply measurable social distancing, then we're okay with that. I think that's where towns are headed. I think that's where our governor headed today. I just wanted to be sure we're in line with that. So today, Mayor, I don't think that I have any recommendation. I would say that whatever happens in our town hall, as far as PPE, I think I'd defer that to the town manager and let her go down that direction on her own. So I don't have any input on that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Allen. Council, I'm going to open up for the rest of you. Let me start with Mr. Clark. Anything you want to add, Mr. Clark?
No, not this time. I want to see how this plays out with what Governor Abbott has proposed. I think there's still some open questions for me. I don't think anybody here can answer those questions. So it'll be interesting in the next 24 to 48 hours to see how it plays out. But nothing to ask or discuss right now.
Mr. Freeman.
No, I mean, I would tell you this, the parks being reopened sooner rather than later makes perfect sense to me. Like, not the playground equipment, not the areas where people can gather like that, like the area that's got the top over it, but opening the parks up sooner rather than later. Because again, parks are where people go just to hang out, fresh air. There's really no issues in my opinion on that. But again, we'll follow you guys' lead on that.
And the parks are open.
Okay.
Our parks are open. The only thing that is technically closed, like at Town Center Park, is the playground equipment, the basketball court, and where you would convene. So we can talk about when and all it is yellow tape. So we can talk about when that should come down.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. May?
Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards, I'm seeing the economic damage that is being done to families. I almost experience that every day as I'm talking to clients. And businesses need to get back open. Families need to get back into some type of socializing outside of their home. I'm glad our parks are open. I understand why playgrounds and exercise equipment might need to be continue to be closed off, but I'm not sure that I think our pavilions ought to be closed off. We've got to take it upon ourselves to try to social distance. I think we're making a great step towards the restaurants and getting them to a place where at least they can open and make it their responsibility to enforce the rules of social distancing, 25% capacity. I really think we've got to get these places back open. It's terribly detrimental to our families and to the business owners. And just as we talked about earlier tonight, all our small businesses in town are suffering immensely. The donut store closed completely. I don't know if they'll open back up. I hope they do, but I don't know if they will. So I'm hoping that we can get some things back going pretty quickly, and just recognizing how serious it is to, it's still here. The virus is still here, I guess. I'm not overwhelmed with the numbers. We all can calculate percentages and realize what they are in the total population of Sunnyvale or Dallas County or City of Dallas or whatever. So we're making some headways. I don't like the political dialogue that's taking place between the county and the governor. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the governor made it very clear pointedly today that the Democratic controlled Commissioner's Court in Dallas and Harris County are subservient to his orders. And that was pretty clear when he called them out. So hopefully that doesn't cause anything to happen negatively in the next 2 or 3 weeks, as there's a conflict in opening up between those two bodies.
Thank you, Mr. Wade. Mr. Egan?
I don't have anything to add. I think it's a good conversation that's been presented so far.
Thank you, Mr. Egan. Mr. Finch?
Of course, I have a lot to say, but I think it's been well covered by Mr. Allen and Mr. Way. I'm in agreement with that. I think anytime we legislate out of fear and we legislate without discussion or debate, I think we have to be worried. I think we should always question that and ask questions about it. I do like the idea of us following the governor's orders, and I think my only guidance would be that if we decide that we should take a different direction, that we have an open debate about that and decide where that should fall. But I'm in total agreement with moving forward with getting business back open and getting this moving again.
Anyone else?
Mayor, I do have one question for Jim. Which donut store closed, Jim? The one on Collins or Beltline?
On Beltline. I'm not going to say it's closed. It's temporarily closed. That's all I'm going to say. I just hope they open back up May 1st.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I went there on Saturday. I couldn't get anything from there.
It's closed now. It's been closed the entire month of April.
Do we know about GFC, if they've done any kind of curbside deliveries or anything, Mayor?
I think they are open. I have not gone there. I think they are open. Is that right?
I'll say I've gone there. I've gotten takeout several times, so they're open. Good food. Go check it out.
Okay. There are no action. I guess it's a public comment session open for public comments.
There's no action on this item.
Yeah. Do I need to open up, Brenda, on this public comments or no?
No.
Okay. It's okay. Again, I want Susan, and you have a plan. You're planning to put the plastic cover to protect the city, our staff. And I like the idea of telecommuting means possible, encouraging online pay and bill pay. Again, that's an efficiency improvement. This is, COVID taught us some lessons, right? Things we thought in the past we cannot do. This is an efficiency for us. So let us know what's your plan to open back the town hall and the place.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, I agree with the rest of the council. Will comply with the governor, right? I'm sure the big boys, the Dallas County and governor will work it out. I won't be surprised if in a day or two, they all will be aligned.
Yeah.
So, all right, moving on to item number 10, receive status update regarding the timeline on implementation of the police department. Chief.
Evening, Mayor, Council. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Wade for his service to our community and his support of the police department project. Last week, the sergeant and I attended the jail book-in training at Seagoville Jail, and that entailed the book-in process, fingerprint process, and the jail management system. So we went through that. We got some necessary forms printed up that we're going to need to operate on patrol, abandoned vehicle stickers, tow slips, etc. I had a real productive meeting with the Dallas Sheriff's Office command staff last week on the dispatch transition and the contract obligations and options that we have moving forward. And there's multiple issues with changing dispatches and the 911 issue, but there's multiple people working on these projects. Town manager's working on this. Rashad's been working on the 911. My sergeants are been gathering data. And then of course, 911 itself and some of the contract labor or the contracts we have in place with Geocom and everybody else. So it's a complex issue, but we're moving forward on that. Our evidence room was installed last week and it is operational, where you've got several different construction projects going on. The carport that covers the back 8 parking spots so that officers can do their pre-patrol checks on their cars and load up their equipment. Will help in case it's raining. It's pretty miserable trying to do your pre-shift stuff in the rain. So we're getting those covered. And we're basically overall just tightening down the building security wise, more as a police department. You know, in the past it's been a substation and this or that, and we're just tightening it down as any other police department would. You got to have access to the building. You need to be escorted by an officer and so on and so forth. Our cars are actively being upfitted by Dodge, and the graphics were put on the first 3 this week. And then our crimes RMS CAD timeline has been established. They have a very optimistic timeline of if they can get the basics of the RMS up and running in a few weeks. And about 3 weeks from now, officers will go to training and possibly go live with our record management system between May 18th and the 25th. And then last but not least, our recruiting is going well. We've got 39 eligible applicants to sit for the test. I want to re-emphasize that it's probably overly optimistic to think that we would be able to fill 14 positions out of that many people, but we're gonna do our best, and if we need to test in another month and another month after that until we're fully staffed, we will. Innovative Labs, I don't know if you may have seen a couple of weeks ago, Fox 4 did a news piece on a software developer in Dallas who started 3D printing respiratory 95 masks for first responders, and I contacted them, and they are supplying us with 25 of those masks. And in fact, they were supposed to bring them by today, but they were dropping some off in Tarrant County, so it'll probably be tomorrow, but that's gonna be a big help for us. That's about it.
So if you feel overall good about our October date?
The October date is, there's a lot of caveats involved in that, and that mainly involves the dispatch transition right now. So we are prepared to take over day shift patrol as soon as we can work out some of these dispatch issues.
Okay, otherwise you have a backup plan, right? working with the town, with the Dallas County, in case you don't get
Yeah,
the
we're-
date.
Yeah, right now we're just kind of in a holding pattern. We've got another meeting with Seagoville officials Wednesday, and I'll probably be able to update you, or the town manager can update you after Wednesday on where we're at.
Council, any question for Chief?
No, if you need more hand sanitizer, let me know, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Keep on marching. Okay, moving on to item number 11, Mayor and Council request for future staff updates on agenda items. Are there any requests?
Mayor, I don't have a request for agenda items, but I do want to say, Jim, this is a horrible way to say thank you for your service on a virtual. And hopefully we'll get a chance to do this right here in a few weeks when we drop these shades and get to shake your hand in person. So again, I just want to tell you thank you for your service to our town. I know you're not going away. You're still going to be here. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Also, want to
Yeah, I'd love to say the same thing, Jim. Learned a lot from you. Will be missed, and this is not the right way. So, Mayor, I definitely want to push as soon as we can. Y'all get back together that we have the appropriate send off for Mr. Wade. It's been a real pleasure, and I know where you live, right around the corner. So,
We will ask Mr. Wade to come back, and hopefully he will come back again later.
just a couple more shout outs. Susan, it's always great to hear an audit tell us that our staff is doing well and that there's absolutely nothing that's a problem with what y'all are doing. I just want to thank you for your hard work. This is a trying time for everybody. And while we're doing whatever we're doing, you're plugging away and keeping our town together, you and the rest of the staff. So I want to thank you for that. And also Chief Hawkins, trying times for you, and you continue to impress us all with what you're doing. So thank you all for your hard work and government service and keeping our town going. It's just the beginning of some great things. And thank you, as well as Brenda. I'll just say to you as well, I know you keep a lot of towns going, and a lot of questions similarly, I'm sure. But thank you all very much for your hard work, and Mayor, you as well. Thank you, sir, very much for your leadership.
So coming back to the agenda, any requests for future staff updates or agenda items? Okay, if there are none, item number 12, I'm going to call for a motion to recess into executive session pursuant to Chapter 551, Subchapter D of the Texas Government Code, Economic Development Project STG.
Motion to adjourn into executive session.
Motion made by Mr. Freeman and second by Mr. Clark to adjourn into executive session.
And just a reminder, if you could try and keep your Zoom open, because we're going to have to reconvene to adjourn, and then call in on your other phone line that we've provided to you via email.
But no one can hear through the Zoom then?
We're going to go into other
Gotcha.
meeting.
Okay, can I have,
Joseph, you'll-
okay, everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed, Mr. Finch, did you approve? Okay, got it. Motion approved 7-0. Now time is 9:24 and we are in executive session.
Hey, Susan, could you tell us the number on that list? I see 2 or 3 numbers here.
We'll send a text to you, Mr. Allen.
Joseph, can you send me a text to me also?
Yes.
Thanks.
Just send it to all of us,
Will do.
please.
I'm just glad it's not me this time.
All righty.
Giddy up.
Speaker on, yeah, recording on.
Haircut.
Everybody's back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. I don't know why you're shaking your head. Now time is 10:12. We are back in regular session. I can confirm that as a result of the executive session, no action is to be taken. With that, council, we are at the end of the council agenda. Council, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Finch, seconded by Allen to adjourn for the meeting. Everyone heard the motion?
Aye.
Signify. All opposed, motion passed 7-0. Time is 10:12. Meeting is adjourned. Good evening, staff. Thank you very much. Brenda, appreciate it.
Good night, Jen.
Joseph, of course.
Brenda, enjoy your drive back to Colleyville tonight. It's kind of short.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Good house.
Not at all.
Brenda, you were involved in Frisco Square?
Yeah.
I actually used to work for Behringer Harvard. We actually raised capital to build it.
Yeah, you did after Cole McDowell lost it.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting time in the real estate markets.